Yeah.
I'll be endeavoring to cover pretty much.
All right, just go. You don't have to tell me anything.
Okay.
Think about me as one of those.
Optimo.
You can, if I have a problem with something, I'll let you know.
John Turturro, good evening.
Good evening.
Okay. Why did you want to become an actor?
I don't know. If I really had the definitive answer to that question, I probably wouldn't have become one. I guess, you know, little kids, you imagine you're all these different things. And I certainly used to watch, you know, old movies a lot, and that was a way of, you know, traveling almost. Another thing, you know, which a lot of people do is we used to have records in those days. They weren't discs, you know, as they are now. You know, they weren't. What are they called now?
CDs.
CDs. Yeah, I keep thinking of DVDs, or on the computer or an iPod. But I used to listen to records a lot, and you know, dance around and you know, fantasize I was this or that or whatever. But I was like a lot of kids. You know, I liked athletics. I'm a big sports fan. I like movement. I like dance. I like sports. And little by little, you know, I used to entertain my friends. And you know, you realize sometimes when you can hold people's attention. I think people don't really talk about that. If someone can hold someone's attention, and you know, actors talk about all these, well, I did this and I did that, but your first impulse is to hold someone's attention, and I was able to do that, you know, with my friends. I used to do impressions and things, and I was always interested in literature and stories, and then in films, and then I started going to the theater, and I thought, wow, this is something maybe I could do, because I never knew anyone in movies. And you know, when I did a play in, you know, high school, it was a musical, and I got to dance and things, I you kind of fell in love with it, because it was like athletics. It was very physical, but it was also imaginative, and it was, I mean, sports, you have to be smart too to figure something out, but it's a different kind of intelligence. And I guess I wasn't a great enough athlete to be a professional, but I liked the combination of the physicality, the imagination, you know, going someplace new. I also was a kid who didn't travel a lot. I really didn't, you know, live near an airport. I never went on a plane until I was 22, 23 years old. So that was one way of traveling, sort of, you know, like listening to music and watching films. But once I participated in it, people responded to me, and I liked it. And I thought, well, wow, maybe this is something I could do. And then when I went to college, I really studied, you know, theater and English, you know, and I did a lot of plays, and I was raw, but I did well, and you know, I kind of fell in love with the whole process of trying to create something, and I still enjoy that process when I get a chance to do it. So I don't know. That's a long-winded answer to your question, but I don't think anyone knows exactly. I mean, nowadays, you hit a certain age, I think, wow, I wish I would have. A couple of years back, I was thinking, why didn't I become a doctor? You know, I kept thinking about that, and I thought, well, maybe it was because I wasn't that good in science, or I wasn't that interested in science. But I do think if you're a great doctor, obviously you can affect someone's life. And I don't know what, I was thinking about it for various reasons.
You don't think a great actor affects somebody?
I think you don't save anybody's life. I think certainly if somebody's sick and laying in bed and they're watching something you told a story, you certainly are helping them get through the day. You know, you're helping them think about something different or entertain them. Or I think storytelling is a natural thing because it's how children make sense of life. And I think people did it early on. You know, first you need food and shelter and heat, and then you need companionship. And then after that, storytelling. I mean, I think the basis of any religion really comes out of storytelling. You know, it does. There's all these stories, whether they're true or not true, it comes out of that need. And I think it's a very, all little kids do it, and they do it better than adults. I don't think adults can compare. Even great actors, they really can't. It's a kid, he really believes it. I mean, he believes it completely when he does it. And no one can do it really better than a kid. It's the truth.
Were you encouraged by your family to
Yeah,
pursue acting?
absolutely. Yeah, I was. I mean, my mom was, I would say, the more artistic of my parents, though my father was very expressive. But my mother, you know, could draw and sing, and she wanted to be a designer, and she was very multi-talented. And so she encouraged us and all, you know, to do what we were interested in. So we had support. My father was worried that I wouldn't make a living, so.
He didn't give you the, you need something to fall back on? Like
Yeah, he did. So I said, well, I could always teach. You know, if I go to school for it, I could always become a professor or something. And once he saw that I was good at it and got a little work, he was really thrilled by that.
At what point did you think this could work for you, that you could do it concretely in your career?
Well, I was in college. I did pretty well in college, and I got out of college and didn't really know how to go about it. So then I applied to graduate school, and I went to Yale Drama School. And I did pretty well at Yale. But I was realistic. I kept thinking, well, you know, I don't have classic leading man kind of look, so, you know, it'll be, if I could just make a living doing interesting material, I was thinking maybe more in the theater. I would love to do movies, but I hadn't really, you know, like once again, I didn't know that world. But I always had confidence in what I could do, even at Yale. And I think they gave me some award, like at the end of my 3 years there, for, you know, being like outstanding acting student, you know, in my class. And we had a lot of good people in there, and I certainly thought of myself as a hard worker. And I did have, you know, I knew if I had an opportunity I could do something. And I got an opportunity very early on, and that really opened up a lot of things, you know, in the theater. I did a John Patrick Shanley play. So, but I kind of always dreamed of getting an opportunity, and then when I did, it felt right, but I was also surprised by it, and I'm still surprised by it. I still kind of keep myself, you know, when I watch something that I think that I did a really good job in, I see it as, well, I did a really good job on that, not that I'm, you know, the greatest thing since sliced bread. And, you know, some people, sometimes people's work get exaggerated. People go, oh, it's the greatest thing in the world. And so I've been on both sides of that. And I haven't always pursued the most commercial paths at times. I haven't. A couple times I've had to.
Why had to?
Because you have to pay the bills and you have to keep alive. And it gets harder and harder that way because movies are becoming more big events, you know, kind of pushed in the direction of kids, of young people. You know, when I was a kid, I wanted to see adult movies. That was the difference. So I think being a little, you know, humble is good. You could be confident, but sometimes I see people and I don't even see confidence. I kind of see like arrogance, yeah, and I can see that creeping into a performance, or like You always have to play the character who dominates everybody. And life just isn't about that. You know, if you're really interested in life, there is an ebb and flow in life, and there's a change of positions, and humanity is much more complex than that. And I think a truly great actor isn't just great by himself, you know, or great performance. He includes, you know, the world around him. And sometimes people's work that can be really beautiful and really delicate gets overlooked for something much more overtly showy. And that doesn't have that much to do with life, actually.
Do you have any points of reference as actors who...
I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to say who I think does that and who doesn't. Points of reference that I like as an actor, yes. I have tons of them. But I do think the more successful you become, it can be dangerous that you can lose because you don't listen to anybody anymore, or you get removed from life. It's not necessarily the most creative. I don't think there's that many actors who actually, there are a few actors who get better. Some, very few. But sometimes it depends when they made it, or how big they made it, you know. And you know, there are great actors that people don't always, you know, talk about. Like there's a great Italian actor, he's dead, Gian Mario Volante. He was fantastic, and if you see him in American films, he always played the bad guy. But I've seen him in a lot of Italian films, and you realize this guy he was incredible. What an incredible actor, you know. I saw him in a lot of Rosie's films, and Investigation of a Citizen Under Suspicion. You know, he's a really great actor, and you know, not everyone thinks of him in the same, you know, as Marcello, say, for example. You know, he may have been better than Marcello. I don't know, maybe. You know, Marcello was great too, but he was a great actor, and he believed him in these very different kinds of roles. But you know, there are actors, you know, growing up, and actresses that I loved. A lot of the, you know, the old Warner Brothers actors, Edward G. Robinson, I loved, and James Cagney. You know, I mean, Betty Davis, you know, and Barbara Stanwyck, and Kirk Douglas, and Burt Lancaster, very much, and Mitchum in certain roles, and then Brando, Julie Christie, somewhat, Anna Magnani, Marcello, Jean Gabon. So I have a lot of actors that I like.
So what would you just say was your big break, if there is such a thing?
I think when I did this one play off Broadway, a lot of people saw me in that, and I started getting roles. And the guy who wrote that then wrote a movie, and he fought for me to do it, called Five Corners. And even though it wasn't that successful, a lot of people saw my work in it. And I still think if I had to name, like, you know, a bunch of the best things I've done, and the role I had in that was a great part. And it's, you know, one of the better things I've done. And from that role, I got into a lot of other movies, you know, and you know, Spike Lee and the Coen Brothers, who knew me, saw it and saw my theater work, and that helped me work with them. And then those movies helped me work with someone like Francesco Rosi and Robert Redford, and you know, and all these other people.
So who did you meet first, Spike Lee or?
The Coens I knew from Frances McDormand, because I went to Yale Drama School with Fran. My wife Catherine Borowitz and Fran and I were all friends, and Fran played my daughter in some play, and I've always liked Fran a lot. Fran is someone who I really feel has gotten better as an actor. Even in school, she was really like a very hard-working person, and she's gotten, you know, better and better. So we were friends first, and they saw me do a lot of plays, and then they saw me do this movie Five Corners, and a few other movies too, To Live and Die in L.A., and Sicilian, but then they wrote Miller's Crossing for me. And, you know.
They wrote it for? For
me, yeah, they wrote that for me, and they wrote Barton Fink for me too, yeah.
Did you know they were going to write those for you?
No, they said they were writing a part for me.
Yeah.
And you know, and then in the middle of it, they got writer's block, and then they wrote Barton Fink in the middle of Miller's Crossing because they had writer's block, and then they went back to Miller's Crossing, and So I didn't even know, about, what it was going to be.
Because he's a kind of heinous character, your character in Miller's Crossing, isn't he?
Well, it was kind of like playing the devil or something, almost, It was really well written, so I had a lot of fun preparing for it and stuff. And, when someone does that, then I met Spike. Spike before I did Miller's Crossing because he saw Five Corners. But I knew I was going to do a Miller's Crossing, eventually. And then Spike saw the movie, and then he asked me to do the right thing. And so those have been two, big collaborations. And, I've had other relationships with people. I've never gotten a chance to work with them again, either with Rosie or Redford or Peter Weir or Allison Anders and Tom Turturro I've worked with, who I liked working with, even though we argued a lot, but I think he's a good director. And, there's some people you'd love to work with again, but you don't always get the opportunity. So you can't sit around, waiting for that.
So how come you had the opportunity to make something like 8 films with Spike Lee and quite a number with the Coen?
Well, a lot of the movies I've made with Spike, I've done a lot of cameos for him. I've really made like 4 movies where I've had really big roles, and everything else I did, because I'm his friend, he's always asking me, could you do this little thing and that, and it's hard for me to say no to him. So Coen Brothers, I've had 4 real, roles, and because they're, my age or they're prolific, I don't know.
So when you look back on Do the Right Thing, what do you think?
I think it was an interesting movie. I think it was a good movie. I think especially the energy of it, the comedy of it especially. I think there was something very exciting about making that movie, and it translated onto the screen. I really did. I think Jungle Fever has some great things too. It's not as unified maybe as that, but I also felt, that was a really good collaboration we had on that one.
And what's Mr. Lee like as a director?
I don't know. What's he like as a director? He's very, prepared. We do a lot of rehearsals. In the old days, we do a lot of rehearsals and improvisations, and I've done a lot of writing on his movies too for him, with Jungle Fever especially. And then once you get up there, if you have an idea, he's usually very open to it, but he's, he runs a tight ship. But you do get a chance to explore in rehearsals and change things, and I like doing that. The Coen Brothers, they usually write something, that's the way it is, and they've thought about it. But I have a lot of, conversations with them. And I've rehearsed with them, like on Barton Fink, I rehearsed with them. Some actors don't like to rehearse movies. I like to, if not rehearse the script, at least spend time with the director and figure out, where he's coming from. And once you understand that, that's a big advantage.
How important was Barton Fink to you as a film, as a process, as a...
that was like doing a play almost. I was involved with it for a long time. My wife was pregnant when she gave birth in the middle of the film. So it was, it was a great working experience. If nothing would have come out of it except that working experience and having a child, that would have been great. Everything after that was kind of gravy. We didn't expect very much from doing it. We thought, who's going to really, see this movie? We were surprised. I was surprised. I was shocked. Because that was my first, I guess, movie where I was in every frame of the movie. And I haven't, I've done that a bunch of times. But, Joel and Ethan are just, like I said, they're just really good filmmakers. And they're really nice people to work with and specific, and we had fun. And, we definitely, share a sense of humor about certain things. But it was just, we did it for the right reasons. They got the money. They were lucky to get the money to do something like that, and to do it not in a rushed way. We weren't even tired when we finished the movie because it was such a controlled film. I remember we were all depressed because we're like, wow, this is it's not going to happen again. You know, it was like doing a play, because a lot of days it was just me on a little stage in a room, or me and one other actor.
You weren't sitting there worrying whether you could carry, as they say, carry the film. Then.
I always just wanted to do a good job. I mean, once you apply that, you know, you say, okay, I'm in every frame, so you've got more work to do. And then also you can start to figure out, you know, when you can just be the receiver and stuff too. But I certainly enjoyed doing it, you know, tremendously. I always worry about things, you know. But I didn't think, I thought, wow, it's a big role. I haven't had a big role in a movie. I didn't really get it at all at first. And I did a tremendous amount of research on the period preceding that period, what formed those people in the 1930s. You know, so you have to go back to like the turn of the century and read literature from there. And so I did a lot of work, you know, on it. I was practicing my typing, writing things, and I had done some writing before that, so I understood a little bit of what it was to write. I think it's a really terrific film about a writer. I've played a lot of writers over the years. I haven't counted how many I've played, but I've played a bunch of them.
Do you have an affinity for them at that point?
Well, I don't know. Maybe I like to write a little. I don't consider myself a writer. I have a lot of friends who are writers, and yeah, I finally. They helped me open my career up to get away from playing bad guys, you know, because for a while that's what I was offered, you know, and I didn't really want to do that, you know.
Have you actually made a concerted effort from the get-go to try and avoid being boxed into a certain...
Well, at first you have to take what you can get. Let's face it, the best of what you can get. Sometimes you could say no, and I did do that a few times, even though I needed the dough. I kept doing theater and doing plays, and that was always a way to feed myself. And once I got that opportunity, I didn't want to do things that were just like violent and exploitive. And I feel like some actors have gotten stuck doing that, even great actors. And I don't necessarily like that all the time, you know. It's less of a challenge sometimes to act in an action type of kind of film. So I did consciously, once I had an opportunity, I turned down a lot of that stuff. I did.
I mean, a lot of people were surprised to see you in Transformers.
Well,
should they have been?
Yeah. Some people have said that, and some people were happy that I was in it. So I had, you know, a lot of what I did was cut out, you know, because of that kind of movie. But, you know, I've turned a lot of those movies down over the years, a lot of them. When that came up, my son said, you know, you should do it. You know, it'll be a fun thing to do, and a lot of people will see it. And when I read it, I thought, well, maybe I could do something, you know, fun with it. Why do you want me? I asked them, and they said, we've seen you do comedy, and which I didn't do initially. I never got cast in comedies, and then eventually I showed that I could do that too. So I said, okay, you know, I'll give it a go, and I didn't have a bad time doing it. I had to get used to it. It's a very different way of making movies.
What was the biggest difference between? Well,
working with something that's not there.
Yeah.
I used to tell them, I said, can't you make a big balloon or something that have something to react to? And the kid, Shire, he was very good at it. But it's probably not that long ago that he was playing with his Transformers, you know what I mean? So it was almost like when I play with my kids and we play, you know, figures. I'll play Castle or something, and I'm the knight. And, you know, you have to get into that headspace. And, you know, but like I said, I wish they would have kept more of what I did in it. And, but it was, you had to get into it and do it. It was a little different for me, but not you know, anything can be a challenge. So, and movies, because since I've not done so many of those kinds of movies, are more and more these big extravaganzas now. And so if I say no to every single one of them, it's hard for me to support my real habit. You know.
Was the one for the bank account and one for the arts?
Well, Burt Lancaster used to say you do one for them and one for yourself, one for them and one for yourself. So that's not a bad way to do it. I've done probably like 3 for me and 1 for them, you know, so maybe I have to balance that a little bit more.
I was very surprised to hear Michael Bay actually saying he was intimidated to work with you.
He said that?
Yeah, he did. It's on the DVD, which I have watched for this very reason, so I knew that.
He said he was intimidated to work with me?
Yeah.
Really?
It's of all people. I mean, that's nothing to say.
He said he was intimidated to work with me? Did he say anything more? Like, I got to see this.
But it worked out fine. There was a shot of you guys talking in a corner or something like that.
I'm not a, high maintenance guy. He said he was intimidated to work with. I know he liked me. I like him. He's a crazy guy, but he's got a lot of energy and stuff. And I used to make fun of him all the time. I was trying to base my character on him.
That would explain a few things.
Yeah, I really wanted to be just like him if I could have been. Really. Well, I've heard that people would say they're like afraid of me. It's weird. I mean, George Clooney told people too when I first worked with him that he was like intimidated by him. I was like, but I'm not the kind of guy who comes in a room and says, like that. I don't. My nature isn't one of being, surly and like I'm superior, to you. I try to work with people, and I can stand up for myself because I've worked with really tough directors when I first began, like Billy Friedkin and Michael Cimino, and I learned how to stand up for myself.
What do you get from Cimino? Apart from standing up for yourself, you did Cimino, Friedkin, you did Raging Bull.
Well, Raging Bull, I only had a little, part, but I mean, Marty's not one of those. Marty's more of a, he's a great director, but he's not a, he's not like a bully or like a. He doesn't intimidate you. He's, you listen to him, but he's very funny and charming. I love Marty. I mean, he makes me laugh. So, but those other guys were more militaristic in their approach, let me say. And I learned that I don't respond to that so much, and I learned that eventually someone sometimes has to say, hey, no, I would like to try something my way, or that doesn't work for me, or can I do this? I don't like dictatorship in anything. I'm very respectful to the director because the director has the whole project on their back. But, I've worked with a lot of great directors. I've had that opportunity, a lot of terrific directors. And, you can be good for a couple movies and that's it. Not everybody has a huge body of work. There are some people who do, and I mean, Francesco Rosi, if you look at his body of work compared to Cimino or Friedkin, I mean, in my opinion, he dwarfs them. You know what I mean? They're not in his league he's a, I've seen a lot of his films over the years, and some of those films are just, he broke the form. When I worked with him, I learned a lot from him because he was strong, but he was also delicate, and so, but I just learned to take care of myself a little bit more, and my job isn't to always say yes. My job is to investigate, and if something's not right, they'll be happy in the long run. But, I'll try to make it work their way. It depends what kind of movie it is. If it's a sillier movie, you have to get into the whole frame of mind of that. When I was younger, I would get more upset, when people were just being silly or whatever. And I did a comedy when I was younger, which the studio trashed, which is very funny, some of it. I mean, it's called Brain Donors. It was like a Marx Brothers film, and I got the Groucho Marx role. I auditioned for it right after Barton Fink, and I didn't really like Groucho Marx, so I did it my own way. And they thought I was the guy after hundreds of people tested. And the studio changed hands 3 times while we were making it. And I had a hard time doing it, but I realize now that it was pretty good what I did, and the film is pretty good. And I was a little suspicious of the whole genre. And to do an out-and-out comedy is very hard. And I actually think my performance in it, I don't know if you've ever seen it, but I think it's really good. And it's really free. And I wasn't trying to imitate Groucho Marx because I don't relate to him. You know what I mean? I'm not that kind of, even though my lines were written that way, I'm not such a acerbic or cynical performer. I kind of have to get it in my body and stuff.
And this is making me think of Jesus in the Big Lebowski.
Right.
I mean, it's,
Well, that's something that was inspired by a play that I had done, and that's something that I still like to do, a continuation of it, and I've come up with an idea. We'll see if that ever happens. But when they were telling me they were writing, I thought it was going to be a huge role. So when I did it, I was like, well, where's the part? So they realized I was going to throw a lot of stuff in when I got to the bowling alley, and even though they choreograph everything, they let me come up with a huge amount of stuff because I know them. And I figured, they said, well, we knew you were going to come up with stuff. And I did come up with a lot of physical stuff. A lot of that business is mine, but I got to give it to Joel and Ethan because, they inspire me to want to surprise them because they're so full of imagination that I want to come up with something that they didn't think of. It's almost like not a game, but I want to surprise them. I want to make them happy. So, so some of the things I would do for them, people have asked me, they say, could you do something like that in this movie? And I get very upset when people say that. I go, hey, I know these guys 20 years, that I don't repeat. At least I try not to repeat what I've done. I'm not always successful, but I'm not going to base it on something else I've done for doing another movie, People have asked me that, and I want to slap them when they say that to me because that's not very respectful, of something else that you've created and that is theirs and not yours.
you don't ask somebody to repeat what they did over there. You don't.
Yeah, it's like bad lovemaking.
You do it just like you did last night.
Yeah, just do it exactly the same way.
I mean, the whole ball preparation. I mean, I wasn't really going to ask about this, but you got me thinking over the whole.
Yeah, I just kept coming up with all these crazy things. So yeah.
Thing.
Yeah.
I mean, because I think it's for me, that for personally anyway, I don't know how many minutes it is.
It's about 5. I mean, I'm in 2 scenes basically in the movie.
You burn off the screen into.
Yeah. Well, when they put it together, they said, "We got to show it to you, John." And when I forgot what I had done, I was editing, I think, my second film, Illuminata, and I went to see it. I was so embarrassed when I saw it. I mean, I was laughing, but I put my head down. I was completely embarrassed. I said, I can't believe you put all that stuff in there, every single thing. And that's the thing with Joel and Ethan. When you do something with them, 98% of the time, it makes it in. And that's a great thing. Because I've worked with a lot of people, including Spike, where I've lost half my performance. Like half my performance. So it doesn't make sense the same way,
Are they big multi-takers, or is like...
No, they do, 3, 4 takes.
The guy in Oh Brother, We're Out Thou, were you approaching that as comedy, or were you just approaching it as a character? Because it's a kind of over-the-top, grotesque characters which you can get your teeth into.
Well, they wanted it to be that way. I mean, they wanted the teeth and all that stuff. So I asked them what they want, and then I go for it. I say, they say, we wanted you to be really, I mean, you had one guy who was smart, right? Who's a smart, good-looking guy. And then the other guy is just dumb and sweet. And then the third guy is kind of, snarly and, grouchy and, and they wanted me to shave my head. And they said, once I shaved my head and put the teeth in, I was like a monster. So I just read the script and see where I fit in and like the Three Stooges, really. So.
Was it a fun film to make?
Yeah, it was great. It was a lot of fun to make. I mean, I enjoy doing anything with them because every little thing you can do. But that film has got more of a comic fantasy element to it. It's not like you're going to do, I mean, I taped people and I looked at people and, there was a thing with the eye, like my eye would go back and there was some guy, he had like a weird eye, and, I would just hang out with all the guys in Mississippi and talk to them all day long. And I've been talking that way the whole day, telling them like the whole time, I can't really do it the way I used to. But, when I had my teeth in, it was very different. And I just really, and people they thought I was from Mississippi, and I was like a white trash character. So I don't know what was the eye thing, but I did this dead man stare or something, I was like, that was my homage to Timothy Carey, yeah. Yeah. Johnny Depp and I are obsessed with Timothy Carey. We're going to maybe make a movie about him someday, Timothy Carey. He's the most eccentric actor of all time. There's no one more eccentric than him. I talked to Jack Nicholson about him. He knew him. He directed him in some Roger Corman film. And there was a crazy guy. Oh my God, Timothy Carey. Johnny Depp and I, we do dueling imitations of him all the time.
So Mac was it your directorial debut?
Well, I'd done it as a short and worked on it as a play. So yeah, but yeah, as a feature, yes.
How important for you was it, both professionally and personally, Mac?
I don't really think about it, keep it as how important things are to me. I mean, obviously if I wanted to do something, I turned down a lot of work at that time. I could have done a lot of commercial films. I was a very hot actor at that time. I was like the hot actor of the year, Rolling Stone and all this stuff. And I decided to go make my own movie and not do all this other stuff. And it was something that I wanted to do because my father wasn't around anymore by then, but I was really driven to do it. And because I felt it was a way of being in touch with my father, and also I felt it was a story that had universal ramifications, a world that you never see. I was tired of just movies about Italians as gangsters, and I wanted to make that, I could make 5 movies about the world of building, as far as I'm concerned, because there's great stories there that are never told. They make a cop movie, every 3rd movie is a cop movie. Why don't they make movies about, what it takes to build a great structure, a bridge or a big giant building. There's unbelievable stories in it. It's unbelievable when you read about the building of things. And they never do. They do it about the sinking of things. So it just makes me think that, it's like why people stop when there's a car accident, But you can learn a lot about something. I mean, I read after the World Trade Centers fell down, when my uncles worked on the World Trade Centers, I read all about the building of it. And it's fascinating. And it has a lot of ramifications of why they fell the way they fell and what happened to them and where they had to cut corners and not. It's a human endeavor, And so I thought, wow, I mean, I'd love to make a movie about the building of a bridge. There's so many great stories about different bridges that were built. And, people died and were heroic and did all kinds of things. You never see it. So that was my little foray into that. And maybe someday I'll take a second stab in that kind of a world. So, but I'm very happy I made that film. A lot of people love that movie.
Because I heard the construction workers admire it.
A lot of people. There's a lot of people come up to me and they don't even know I directed it. And they say, what movie I really, love that you did was the Carpenter film, they call it. And people were very touched by that movie because it was very truthful and it was not sentimental, and it's about something. And it's about the cost of something too. And it's truthful, because lots of families have worked together and then splintered too. It's very hard to work. I've had girls who were in business with their sisters tell me that they love that film, So I mean, I don't think anything I did is perfect or whatever, but I think it's a powerful. It has something truthful in it, and loving too.
How did you cope with the dual hats of director and actor? No problem.
It was schizophrenic.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I had done it I was very prepared. The hardest thing was I had some arguments with my DP, but not with my actors. That was pretty easy.
Why would you argue with the DP? Do you want something you don't?
Yeah, that's it. It happens all the time. He did a great job too, but we did have, I wasn't sure enough all the time to say, hey, just do it the way I want you to do it and be quiet, because I don't like being that way. And he just was, he was temperamental, and but he did he just didn't always want to do the composition that I wanted. So we had some fights.
Who won?
I think he got to do mostly, he was happy with what it was, and we had it took a lot out of me sometimes. He almost lost for real, so, he almost got, but I was too too much bigger than him. So
Well, you were the director after all.
that's true. I also come from the world of construction, so the people, it's not like the movie world. I grew up watching people get knocked down. I watched it all the time, and it was like, so these people, they have arguments. They think it's a big thing, but I didn't grow up that way. I grew up, my father, he said something, someone didn't do it, they knew it, and people, they were much more direct in their saying, well, I'm not doing that, so go ahead, what are you going to do to me? And in movies, people are afraid, It's
Maybe
different.
Michael Bay had heard this conversation somewhere.
Yeah, I don't know.
Obviously, Spike Lee acted, directed his films. De Niro he was De Niro on The Good Shepherd, Redford, The Quiz Show. Is there any real benefit in the director coming from an acting background?
Yes and no. Yes and no. I mean, it depends. You can have a guy who's an actor, and he can be really gruff with the actors, because all of a sudden he becomes a director, and he forgets about that. So I think it's best when a director is prepared, knows what they want. If they know how to talk to actors, that's good. I mean, De Niro was very good in little physical bits, like in little behavioral things. So was Robert Redford. I think Robert Redford had a certain connection to that movie that he made, and some directors are less sure. Actor directors are less sure of themselves. They keep wanting to explore, and they didn't know how they want to shoot it or not. So I think it's good if you know how to talk to an actor. The older directors, a lot of them were actors, or studied or did theater or whatever, and I think they were able to get certain kinds of performances out of people, maybe multi-dimensional performances. Now, younger directors don't train that way. They don't train in acting classes. They don't do theater. And I think younger people are more comfortable maybe initially in front of the camera. They're more relaxed because they grow up with all these video cameras and the internet, and you're doing this and that. But that doesn't necessarily mean their performances are more complex. Or maybe they can give one or two complex performances as a young performer, but they don't maybe haven't developed the craft of how to attack something that's really difficult, material way beyond them, like you get to do in the theater, or with a great acting class, with those old great teachers who really did change acting. Stella Adler and Sandy Meisner and Strasberg and all those people. The people who were trained out of them, were really well trained, and were wonderful actors. Like take guys like Duvall and De Niro and Marlon Brando studied with Stella Adler, and they gave multi-dimensional performances. So I don't think it hurts if you're aware of that, but some actors can get frustrated too because they know how to do it, and they may not be the most patient sometimes, who are directing. So it really depends upon what the movie is and, what the situation is. It's some people, like they're directors who write something so they understand where it comes from, but they don't know how to talk to you about it. And that's okay. Sometimes you can translate for them. Well, a lot of times younger directors want it the way it's in their head, and that can never be, because you're different than them. You're just a different person. But you can get the sense of what what they're after. But it depends. Redford, I had a really great collaboration with, I have to say. But I had a lot of time with him before we started shooting the movie. So I never thought we'd hit it off like that. We got along great. Maybe because we're so different in some ways, but I'd love to work with him again. And he liked working with, we just got along really, really well. The only difference I had with him was he cut a big scene of mine, and I still think it was a mistake, and I was very upset about it. I think the film would have been more balanced that way. That's the only thing. But I adored working with him.
Is it sometimes a big surprise, if not a shock, to see what the final cut?
Yeah. Most times it's tremendously disappointing. Tremendously disappointing, most times. except for with certain people. A lot of times I see it and I go, what happened? Like that, everything's gone. And, you know, but with other people, it's very close to what you imagined and better. Very close and better. But that's been a handful. And that's why you don't have that much control. Because they can take, I know, I've been in an editing room. I know what happens. So, also sometimes you think, wow, I wonder if they really got everything I was doing, if they really studied it, how many times did they look at it? Because taste is everything. It's everything. There's certain movies I don't like because I don't like the taste of the director. It's not my taste. Or it's not that it has to be my taste. I think there's a lack of taste in it. So I don't like it. So when they're making us select, it depends upon what the person needs for the scene and what their taste is. So it can be, I try to forget about it now. I used to, but like I did a mini series where I played Billy Martin, and I would watch all the footage. I watched all the footage back, and I gave all my notes to the script supervisor so the editor could have it if they wanted to know what I thought. And when I saw it and I didn't like something, they showed me a rough cut, and I said, well, you know, I gave a couple notes to things, and one thing I want to put back in, and they did. But I wonder if the editor ever looked at my notes, because they were very, very intensive of like, I like that little moment there and this, that. And when I saw it, they edited it really well, what I did. And that you're almost more naked because you have less time to cover the scene up, because you're shooting faster when you shoot a miniseries for television. But I really felt I was in the vicinity of what I was trying to do.
And do you feel if you don't like what you see at the end result, do you feel it was a complete waste of your time, or does it process? Well,
sometimes you can see something, you say, well, I did good work within the confines of what we did, and you have to be happy knowing how much time you had to prepare, how much time you had to shoot. Other times you have all this stuff and you watch it and you go, that doesn't mean anything to me. You know, it really, there's a lot of movies I've made, not a lot, but a handful, I go, well, that doesn't mean anything to me. It doesn't mean anything to me. I tried, I'm not maybe, but it doesn't make me feel like I did something great. I mean, I did a movie like Mr. Deeds. I don't think it's a great movie, but but I'm very happy with what I did in the movie. I think I did something creative in it, and people really makes people laugh. So I was like, I'm happy. Now, is it that my kind of movie overall? I think it's, you know, it's okay. It's cute. It's a sweet movie. No, it's not my kind of movie overall. But I like what I got to do in it. You know what I mean? And so that's good. And I like Adam, and Adam is a good guy, and he's a friend of mine, and I like him as a person. And but it's a different sensibility than my sensibility. You know what I mean? Saying, when I work with Joel and Ethan, that's not my exact sensibility. But they're so fastidious that when you see it, you're like, you're really seeing someone's view of life. And I admire that. And I'm very appreciative to be a part of that.
Romance of Cigarettes has become a case where you had an incredible cast, a named director, and it seemed to take forever to come out in the US.
Well, that was a long story. I mean, I had a distributor who loved the film, and they were bought. I mean, you know, I've been with films that the same studio, and it just changes hands, and the film is dumped. I was in a much worse situation than that, because I had a studio that was part of a bigger thing, United Artists, was part of MGM, and MGM was bought by a huge company, Sony. So I was stuck in the middle of nowhere. And the only thing they didn't do was look at it with an audience, because that was the kind of film that you needed to see with an audience to see how it played. And people loved that movie. I mean, you know, the critical establishment, there are people who love it, some people don't get it, some people in between. But audiences respond to that film big time. And, we just got stuck. They never saw it with an audience, and I got stuck. And once someone rejects a film, you know, once you lose your company, and then the company that inherits says, well, we don't really know what we want to do with this, it puts a black eye over it. So when we tried to sell it, people didn't want to pay the price that they wanted for it. I did a little release in New York, and for the amount of theaters that we had a very high per screen average, and we made money for the amount of theaters that we were allowed to show it in across the country. We did better than movies that had $20 million in advertising. So if they would have put it in 100, 500 theaters, they would have made money. I think the film's going to have a long life now on cable, which I know they're excited about it, and the DVD, and because people really dig it. But it's the kind of movie that's almost even better to see with an audience, because it's like a concert film, and that was it. So there was nothing. I did everything you could possibly do, and when we got it out there, we've made some 10 best lists of some people. We got some great reviews from the New York Times, from Salon.com, from Roger Ebert, from out in LA, from there were certain cities we got like rave reviews. They said this is the most imaginative film of the year. So I mean, as far as I'm concerned, Kate Winslet should be she should be up, with all these awards. It's impossible in a supporting role to be better than her. I'm not saying she's the best, but she should be in the conversation because she's brilliant in the film. Gandolfini is wonderful too. But I'm very proud of the film, and I really think people love the film. It did very well here because I had a distributor who distributed it the correct way. And it's done very well in other countries too. So it's going to have a long life. It's going to be one of those films you watch. I have no doubt about it. I mean, Joel and Ethan love the film, and they're very happy that I finally got it out there. But it took a small miracle to do that, because I was up against a behemoth, and I'm one guy, so.
Was it? Did it feel like a risky project going into?
It was a risky project, but we had a very strong U.S. distributor. So I wouldn't have done it. I couldn't have done it without that. I couldn't have raised the money without it. But I had, sometimes you have to be lucky. And that's what it is. If they would have remained, I would have been fine. And I would have made a good amount of money. And people saw it. I just proved that I did very well. I mean, a lot of films just tanked. They tanked. And I had almost no, very little advertising, put a little money into it myself, and we did well. We did well. It's like a small little miracle, and it was risky, but I wouldn't have taken that risk if I didn't have support. You understand? So that's why I felt it was kind of horrifying, because I had something in my hand that disappeared. That's different than not having it. You understand? Very different. I wouldn't have made that film if I didn't have that kind of support. So it's a crazy business.
Well, you've been in the crazy business for 28, 30 years now?
I deny that.
I was never there. Again, I apologize for the formulation of the question, but in 28 years, what have you learned?
That you can't count on anything, that's for sure. But you never know. I think it's hard to trust yourself, because it's such a tentative existence. But when you do, you usually wind up doing better work if you trust your gut. It's also, what I've learned is also that I used to think it was always the part that was more important, and I think now probably it's almost the people that I work with that's more important than even the role sometimes. I would say overall, because that's what makes the experience something. I've certainly seen the business change somewhat. The kinds of films that I used to be able to make and make a nice living at and turn down big movies, now those films are harder to make, and if they are made, they don't want to give you any, they want you to do it for basically nothing. So I know that that's harder to do. And I know that there's usually, if you do something good, there's usually a price you have to pay in order to do that in some ways, unless you're really, really fortunate. And I think most of all I've learned is that, the relationships that I've had, the friendships I've formed out of that, those to me are the most meaningful things than even like, being in a quote unquote something successful. Because those relationships allow you to do things that feed you. And even if the whole thing isn't successful, because you went about it the right way, like I did Miller's Crossing, that wasn't a successful movie, but that really fed me a lot, and I did something in it that meant something to me. So it didn't have to be, money is not everything, because some great movies have been complete failures when they came out. So, you just have to stand the test of time. I always knew that. I didn't want to, I didn't get started as a 21-year-old, so, which I'm glad about.
How old were you when you got started?
I've been doing it seriously since I'm 18, since college. But I really didn't work professionally until I was like 26, 27. Because I was in college. Then I went to grad school. I had done like a little work before that, but not consistently. So, there's all different things. And you never know, each time you take a job, even with a new person, you don't know what that's going to be. You just don't know.
Thank you very, very much.
All right.
Great.
Thanks. Okay.